Account takeovers, malicious campaigns, impersonation, and data breaches are on the rise, driven by the pandemic and security challenges of a remote workforce. The number one most common attack vector in breaches is compromised credentials. Constella Intelligence protects your key employees from digital risk by continuously monitoring the deep, dark, and surface web for exposed credentials, detecting threats that others miss with real-time alerts to protect you and your company from a targeted attack. Try it free at securityweekly.com/Constella. Let's face it, cyber attackers have the advantage. Extra Hop is on a mission to help you take it back. Regain the upper hand with security that can't be undermined, outsmarted, or compromised. When you don't have to choose between protecting your business and moving it forward, that's security uncompromised. See how it works in the full product demo, free online at securityweekly.com/Extra Hop. Cyber risk and compliance automation is finally here. Legacy GRC systems cannot support the powerful, real-time automation and oversight that organizations require to take risks that matter to succeed. CyberSync continuous control automation ingests data from the IT GRC stack to update controls against regulatory requirements and risks in real time, delivering insights and visibility. See how members of the Fortune 500 are saving millions annually by visiting securityweekly.com/CyberSync.
Welcome back to Business Security Weekly. I am your host, Matt Alderman, joined by Jason Albuquerque, Ben Carr, and Bill Brenner. We have a few webcasts coming up soon. First, join us February 16th to learn about validation techniques within applications. Then join us March 2nd to learn 5 things you can do to catch more bad guys. Finally, join us March 10th for an intro to KQL queries. Also, join us on February 9th for a full live stream day from 1 to 6 p.m. with Polarity for a chance to win cash prizes and a samurai sword trophy? No. To register for these webcasts, visit securityweekly.com/webcast. Don't forget to check out our library of on-demand webcasts and technical trainings by visiting securityweekly.com/on-demand. Cyber Risk Alliance Business Intelligence Unit has launched its next survey on Zero Trust. What are your barriers to Zero Trust implementation? Take our survey and enter to win a $500 Tango gift card by visiting securityweekly.com/Zero Trust. Report results will be released at our upcoming Zero Trust e-Summit in March. All right, gentlemen, time for some articles for this week. Bill, this is your first time to the article section. Now, we talk leadership and communication, so not a lot of security news. This first article is actually about leadership. And this opening paragraph, I thought this is what resonated with me. The true objective of leadership, in my opinion, is to serve those who follow you. Boy, that's a pretty compelling statement. Think about that as a leader for a second. You want to serve those who want to follow you. Do most leaders think about that aspect of leadership? I'm not quite sure.
I think folks who have embraced their leadership role and really taken on that responsibility to be a strong leader do think that way. And folks who have been put into leadership positions, in ways that are more, I'll call it, organic, and we're put into positions simply because roles have opened, they may not. And it's a disservice on those managers who became leaders if they're not flexing that muscle and training on how to be leaders, because ultimately the pinnacle of being a leader is that servant attitude. We're here to serve, we're here to enable, we're here to build a culture where it's okay to be challenging the process continually. It's okay to make mistakes and look to improve as we're innovating and executing. And it's our job to really maximize the performance of our teams as leaders. So, I think folks who have studied leadership absolutely take on that role. And folks who do not take on that role, let's start flexing the muscle and really exercising and learning about true leadership style and what needs to be done to have highly effective teams.
Yeah, I think, Matt, when you asked that question, do people really follow that? It made me kind of think, like, how do we actually train that next cadre of leaders, right? How do we encourage people to transition from management to leadership? And I think there's a gap there. I think a lot of people, as Jason put it, like, they just natively, organically end up in that role because someone left and they move up, or that's perceived as the next career step. But I don't see a lot of coaching or I don't know, guidance to get people to that next stage. And I think they're kind of left to flounder sometimes. And I think that's our responsibility as leaders to try to look at how to coach that next group, that the oncoming set of people who are trying to move or ascend to those ranks. How do we get them that positive coaching that sets them up for success?
Yeah. Served by coaching.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't agree more, and we're in a position now where it's even more difficult to lead, right? We have a whole new generation of workforce that have different needs and different expectations, working in a different type of environment. And we hear people talk about the millennials all day long, but I don't enjoy it when other leaders complain about the millennials, right? What I do is say it's our job to figure out how to lead the millennials. This is an entire generation of folks that need a specific type of leadership to make them successful, right? So that's where we sharpen our pencil, sharpen our knife or our tools to become better leaders and learn from that. So, if you have someone who's already struggling with their leadership role and now throw in this other level of difficulty in leadership, it's going to create chaos. So, studying the ability in the ways to lead groups to make them highly effective. I mean, it's things like empathy. You have to lead with empathy, right? You have to have patience with folks. You have to, the traditional ways of if I make a mistake and really making your workforce work with their head down instead of feeling comfortable opening up and talking about mistakes and things they've tried and ways they failed. It doesn't work anymore, right? So we have to have environments where we have that transparency, that empathy, that openness, and creating that environment where everyone can succeed.
I'm totally with you, Jason. I mean, when it comes to bashing on millennials, I think the other thing that people forget is millennials have done the fighting on the battlefield in our wars of the last 20 years. And they could be teaching a lot of us geezers a thing or two. And I think that gets lost.
To your point, I mean, think about the millennial generation, right? So, and again, this is the workforce that we're working with now and trying to figure out as leaders, right? Number one, they grew up in an environment where they could, basically parenting was you can have whatever you want and you get a participation trophy for everything you do. Parents would be out there fighting to get them better grades and fighting their education system. And, they basically had a filter on everything, right? And now we're seeing a workforce who, in an environment that everything was curated, let's call it, there's a lack of courage to ask and bring things up. Now, couple that with a generation who was brought up on technology, instant gratification, everything they want at their fingertips, social media animals, right? I mean, that creates a level of impatience. So now you have a workforce who wants what they want when they want it, right? That's not, a lot of leaders will say they're entitled. No, they're not entitled. They're impatient, right? Because they're so used to having instant gratification. So for us,
I think they're impatient and entitled in a lot of cases. but I think we're also like missing the next wave too, which is Gen Z, which is quite different than millennials, right? I've read some articles lately that I don't think people are cluing in on the fact that Gen Z doesn't want the same thing millennials do. And I think, Jason, you mentioned it in a way is like, understand your people, like understand the people you're leading and what their motivations are. And as a leader, how you need to lead, right? And get them motivated to get to where you want to go.
Yeah. And those millennials are going to be managing the next generation, right? So us as upper level leadership, we need to make sure they're managing correctly downstream.
Yeah.
There are the two articles at the end of this. We'll bring this back up again because it talks about empathetic leadership and the talent shortage. So these are relevant topics. They're towards the end. My next article I brought in was this one around cybersecurity policies, and I brought this in because of our last segment. I was thinking about, what do we have to do to be prepared for crisis? And I'm reading this list and I go, aren't 2, 3, and 4 pretty much the same? Like a policy for dealing with breaches, prepare a disaster recovery strategy, and plan for business continuity. I mean, to me, that's kind of one, but is it really 3 separate things, or do you have to think about them as one?
Well, I mean, it all depends. So many people struggle between the difference between policies, procedures, guidelines, and standards, and not many people, I think, have seen that. Basically the pyramid of how policy works compared to guidelines and standards and things of that nature. So I think policy gets used interchangeably a lot, but ultimately those things are part of a business continuity, disaster recovery, and incident response type policy, right? And then you have the guidelines and standards that follow that. What I would say is that all of these things in this day and age, these 6 policies plus a lot more, we need to take that up to a higher level, because right now it's law in Massachusetts, it's law in Rhode Island, and it's law in other states. You have to have a written information security plan. You have to. That consists of a lot of these policies plus some. So I think that organizations should be looking down that path, right? Figure out what you need for a written information security plan, all of the policies, procedures, and guidelines that need to be aligned to that, start building from there, because it's not just these 6.
Yeah, these 6 are part of it. And I think, to your point, Matt, I think DR and BCP, they can be in InfoSec, they can be somewhere else, but I mean, that's potentially somewhat separate, but the rest of this is fairly standard, right? I mean, I would say remote access really fits up into with acceptable use and how you're going to address that and overall overarching security policy. I mean, there's a master policy of this. I think to Jason's point, that's a level up.
Yep. Next article, many managers don't understand cybersecurity, so they don't do anything about it. This was an interesting set of survey results that came out from Trend Micro, and I think somebody else involved in this one as well. Just talking about the gaps in the understanding of cyber attacks and cyber risks. And then
so Matt, this was a little confusing to me though, right? Because the title of this article was "Many Managers Don't Want to Understand the Risks." And then once you start getting into the article, it was about C-level executives and board of directors for the most part. 90% of this article was the relationship between C-level executives, board of directors, and security teams. So number one, the title of this should be "Many board of directors members or many leaders just don't want to understand," right? I mean, the title was misleading because it's not middle management. It's a conversation around board of directors and C-levels.
Yep.
Which I don't disagree with.
No, not at all.
Right.
But again, it's a misleading article, right? Because if I saw this article and I saw that, I probably wouldn't read it. You know what I mean? Like I wouldn't have gone down that path and actually read it. But I am concerned. I mean, with some of the statistics that are in here about board of directors lack of understanding, right? C-level executives lack of understanding, and then a percentage of them who just really don't give a crap and don't want to understand. That is a super concern, right? And I think that needs to be handled at the highest levels.
And Jason, we've been talking about it for a while, and even before I was here, I've been talking about it. Like the whole concept of the Ciso reporting to the CEO, like it's really you're starting to see a lot of commentary around that, right? And I think people are finally starting to get that come to Jesus moment around, like, yeah, maybe that's the case. It's interesting to see that come out in more and more articles. So I really like that call out in the end of this.
Yeah, agreed. That's probably the biggest piece of this article that I want folks to take home with. This is a conversation that needs to be had. If you're on a board of directors somewhere and you don't have a CISO reporting up to the CEO, start leveraging your influence.
So this is more board focus, not manager focus, as you said. Here's the really scary numbers for me. Almost 2/3, 62% said that the board would only sit up and take notice of cyber risks if the organization suffered an attack or data breach. Holy cow. Think about that number for a second. 2/3 of boards will not do anything around cyber risk unless they've actually been attacked.
Yeah. So I have a strange feeling that rug's going to start getting pulled out from underneath those folks, because we just had a conversation around this on the break. Cyber liability insurance is going by the wayside unless you meet certain criteria, and you're going to lose your cyber liability insurance if you're not focused. So that safety net of saying, my insurance will cover it, it's going to be gone soon. So people better wake up.
I would agree with that, Jason. I think you could attribute it to saying that, a lot of C-level execs and boards have said, well, we have insurance, so if we have an issue, we'll be covered, right, to a great extent. Sometimes not knowing that it doesn't cover them to the great extent that they think it does. But I would even go further than this and say it's a problem in contextualizing the information, right? Like, how do you put the numbers together without fear, uncertainty, and doubt of what the risk is, and how do you put that into evaluation, right? And I think that's the challenge. Is when I've worked for some pretty large organizations and pretty risk averse organizations, they had a hard time understanding like what was the actual impact of a breach versus many other risks to the business that they've actuarially figured out, right? And they understand if they have this impact, this is the dollar value. But from a cyber side, it's brand impact, right? It's potential customer, not wanting to do business with you. Like, what does that look like as a real number? And I think not being able to get hard values on that kind of hampers the discussion at the board level of this is a serious topic.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, I once had a CEO say to me, why do I need a Ciso? I have insurance for that, right? And that's what made me think of this. And that, that tells me they're not educated. They're not educated as to the why and the outcome and the risk, right? So that's where that relationship and those conversations, those deep conversations, and as as a security leader, you need to understand the business, right? We talk about this all the time because you need to be able to message that in business context, not cybersecurity or technology context.
Yeah. And I think that's where the relationship with the CFO can be. The relationship with the CFO can be critical, right? So if you could go to the CFO and say, hey, look, if we lost XYZ application tomorrow or had this type of customer impact, what would the risk look like to you? And what would the valuation be to you? And like, how would we compensate from that? What would be the total? I mean, to sit and walk through those scenarios outside of, the board discussion or the C-level staff meeting, to just have a lunch conversation and talk through some of those things can really get other executives thinking about, geez, I didn't really think about, the total impact to the business and what the cost could be.
Yeah, and I would also say, have some good conversations with your legal team as well. If you have inside counsel, talk to them. If there's a third party counsel that you work with, have some conversations with them, because understanding the financial and the legal ramifications is huge.
Yes. Next, 5 steps to a successful cybersecurity champions program. Have either of you implemented a cybersecurity champions program?
Yes, we had cyber warriors at my last place. Absolutely. We call them cyber warriors.
Love this one. Yeah, I think this is key. Like I've got a role on my leadership team. Most places I've been, I call it a BSO, Business Information Security Officer. Mm-hmm. They're responsible for running a cyber champions program, right? And I would extend that now. Currently, I also have responsibility for privacy. So we're kind of using it security and privacy champions. And that gives you that reach out into the org where you can actually get, that bi-directional flow of information. Hey, we have some concerns about cyber, but we're not sure what to do. And hey, we want to give you some more information or guide your program in a certain way. And so it's a great bi-directional conduit actually into the business and to tie you into what's going on.
Yeah, and you have an evangelist, right? You have an extension of your team within that department. So now you have someone out there championing. That's right. But you have to, it's not something you can just do on a whim, right? So the whole point of this is here's a strategy to make sure it's successful. The planning, I think, is one of the most important pieces, because in order to bring in that type of champions program, you need to be able to articulate to these folks, and if they report up to a different leader in the organization, expectations, level of effort, their level of engagement, the amount of cadence they're going to have with you, the expectation on them becoming an evangelist for the organization. There's a lot that you have to explain, and a lot that you're going to have to get buy-in from not only the individual, but that individual's leader as well. If they're not, if they roll up to a different leader in the organization. So planning is huge.
The last one around incentivizing. Do you have to? And if you do,
but it's all about your definition of incentive, Matt. It's all about your definition of incentive, right? Because incentive can be a weekly newsletter where you highlight one of the champions. It can be recognition in town hall meetings that you have for the organization. It doesn't have to be financial compensation. It could be you have this, this group of folks who are champions within the organization. You hand out a challenge coin that you have specifically made.
Yeah,
It doesn't have to be something expensive, right?
It's just got to be something that shows them that you value their participation and that they're a valued part of the organization. And anytime you give somebody kudos and make them feel like they're standing out from the rest, then that kind of builds that organic structure, I think, and builds the desire to be part of that champion and be successful.
Yeah, it's all about recognition, right? And you figure out different ways that you can recognize these champions for adding value to the organization and get creative with it, right?
Which is kind of why I brought this next article in around the 7 communication tips for new leaders to get good results faster, because I'm thinking with a champions program, in general you do, but if you think about all the communications that have to happen across all these different teams, like, are there ways to do a better job across those teams to get them to engage and get better results through the program? So that's why I brought this next article in, bond with your team and reap the rewards.
Yeah. I mean, this is leadership strategy all day long, right? I mean, make sure you know your team, connect with them, make sure they know the vision and the outcome that you're looking to achieve, right? Make sure you're celebrating success, like we just talked about. And then having that, we talked about it in one of the first articles, right? Encourage questions, challenge the process. We want that open dialogue.
Right. Yeah.
No,
now that leads me. Oh, sorry, Ben.
No, I was just saying I agree with all that. I think this was it's the tenets of leadership and how you lead, right? Smart goals. I love having smart goals where they're measured, they're time bound, they're actionable. I mean, all that's great. So yeah, love the article.
Yes, smart goals have been the bane of my existence for the last week or so. I finished mine, so now I'm working on my team's goals, and we use the SMART framework to develop them. So as Bill knows, he's going through the process. This next article, yeah, you're supposed to be. This next article I brought in because of this empathetic discussion we had at the opening of this, right? And this research is really interesting that depending on whether you're a high or low empathetic leader, negative feedback actually impacts you differently. And this, again, because of the generations we're trying to bring up through the leadership ranks, right? The millennials, the Gen Zs, and the differences. Everybody talks about being an empathetic leader, but high empathetic leaders actually take negative feedback worse than others, and there's strategies and discussions in here on how to do it effectively so you don't actually impact your existing leadership. Some interesting research here.
Yeah, totally. I
consider myself an empathetic guy, and I've never been bothered by your critiques.
They're always positive.
I mean,
yeah, but I think about it. So I think the article to that point was that the people giving the feedback, right, how they actually respond to it, not necessarily the people receiving it. So it was interesting from that perspective to think about the impact on the leader from how they deliver, that information.
I mean, at the end of the day, delivering what you would consider negative news or negative feedback, it's a stressor no matter what. No leader wants to do that, but it's part of the job, right? And it's all about how you handle that communication. And it's a tough position to be in, and not everyone. That's why not everyone's built to be a leader, right? I mean, it's at the end of the day, not every person is built to be a leader, and you really have to strive and feel those pains and feel those stresses. And it's a role where at the end of it, when good things are happening, your team gets credit for it. When bad things are happening, you're taking the rap for it, right? So it's one of those positions where you have to build yourself up to be a leader, and giving that bad news is never fun, no matter what.
But Jason, so I guess I'm wondering, we had this conversation about millennials a little earlier, and I'm wondering about what your perspective is on that, right? Because I find that, sometimes it's the job and you have to give it, but it almost seems like there's an extra level of coaching to be given,
yes,
to these younger people coming into the workforce or that have been there for a little while about, look, it's critical that you understand like everything's not rosy. And that negative feedback can be the most constructive for how you actually improve and grow. And so I'm wondering, do you see that the same? Have you had those conversations, and do you find it challenging that there seems to be, that sweet spot of, call them millennials again, but I don't want to, it goes outside that group as well. Some people just don't take constructive criticism well and actually improve on it.
Yeah, no, 100%. So yes, it is a challenge. Yes, it's something that I've dealt with. And like any meeting, I walk into those conversations first by knowing my audience, right? And really taking a step back and say, all right, who am I talking to today? How do I need to present this message? And really, putting thought into it. That's the empathy side of it, right? Putting thought into who I'm speaking with. And if it's someone who I feel won't take criticism well, or is in that millennial, type mindset, right? Because you said it does, that thought process does extend, beyond on both sides of that age group. It's all about how you deliver the message. And ultimately, you can change hearts and minds, but you can't change all hearts and minds. You need to be okay with that, right?
Sometimes you just need to bring the box of tissues with you to the meeting.
No, never. and if mom or dad give me a call about it, I'm definitely I'm not going to have a future relationship with that person.
Having the conversation,
it's never happened to me, but I've actually had colleagues tell me that mom has called and said, "Hey, my son or daughter," and it's like, whoa, that's way too far.
But
it's a balance, right? You can, I'm an 80-20 kind of guy. And at the end of the day, I realize I'm not going to be able to change hearts and minds of 100%. But if I can get to that 80% and really get those great players, mature them, build them into productive colleagues and employees, I think we're doing a great job. We're doing a service to, I think, a generation who had a little bit of disservice given to them. So.
Sure.
Yeah, I need to turn you into a factory, Jason, because with this last article, the war is on for cybersecurity talent. If you can train them well, then when they go elsewhere, they can help train the next generation too. Because True. Yeah. I mean, if you want to talk about and again, I know this article is focused on the healthcare vertical, but this is everywhere, right? It's scary. I mean, the numbers are just getting worse, right? As far as talent out there, and we really need to be focused on how we can retain / build talent internally. It's a must, right? Yeah,
some of the things out there. Stress is the things that are really taking effect in affecting our employees is obviously stress, right? I mean, working in an environment that's high speed, low drag, right? And then training budgets getting slashed all the time. High expectations on a cybersecurity team. And then we talk about the tools issues all the time about organizations having 60, 70 siloed tools and now looking to consolidate. So now they have the madness of the cybersecurity market with all these tools out there that say they're going to be the next thing since sliced bread, and they're not working. So yeah, there's a lot there, and we have to manage all that, right? We have to find solutions to keep our workforce happy. Otherwise, with this talent gap, they're just going to be jumping around, and we're not going to be able to keep a workforce.
Right.
Well, and it's show me a more evolving field than cyber, right? Like something that's changing as fast, and we're having to respond to it as quickly. You're always building the car as you're driving down the street, right? It's a challenge. It's really hard to keep up with it, and I think it's hard to find good talent that can actually meet that challenge to ever grow and evolve in their own, technical capability and experience, right? I mean, and we it's hard to find time to send people to training or do, keep up. There was a comment in here about maintaining CPE credits and stuff. It's good luck. I mean, it's on one hand, there's a ton of vendor contacts that you're making and trying to learn new technologies, but really to stay current and be ready when the tech is there. So you're on the ground and running with it. It's super hard. I mean, I don't see any shortage to this, the professional shortage in the market. I don't see any time that's coming to an end. It's going to be an ongoing problem we have to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, we see it in our business, right? I mean, we're on the media side of the house, right? We're hiring people. You got to retain people. Like, there's so many opportunities out there. The number of people that like ping me for open, it's nuts. It's like, holy cow! and that barrage of that to your existing employees, you're also trying to recruit talent. Mm-hmm. It puts a lot of challenges on a business to hire and keep, because even if you hire new and you lose now you got to go back out into the hiring process. It's a lot of work.
It's super expensive and impactful to the company, and people aren't thinking about, I mean, from an HR perspective and a hiring side, I think it's really short-sighted to think about a 3% raise or 4% raise with inflation and everything going on right now, trying to keep those resources. It's just not going to scale. I mean, the impact to the business and the actual true cost of trying to replace somebody, deal with an outage for 3 months in that role, get them up to speed. And by the time you get them up to speed, somebody else is leaving. It's an insane cycle. I mean, we really need to think about, how we compensate and how we encourage people to stay within companies for these high demand roles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, just the churn that I see with some of the customers we're working with, right? And I mean, they coming to us to fill gaps because folks on their IT team are just leaving, all the time, and it's hard. I mean, you can't constantly lean on partners for that either, right? We can augment, we can help get you through it, but at the end of the day, it's costing money, and it's a cycle that these leaders have to go through. These HR teams need to go through. On the regular, right? So it's, I always talk about good busy and bad busy. Having this cycle of employees going in and out and in and out and in and out of the organization, that's bad busy, right? Focus on good busy on how you retain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. As Bill knows, when you're using third parties to fill gaps, you have limitations. Speed, quality, costs, etc. Right? It is a stopgap, but it is not a long-term solution, and it is very hard to scale a business on third-party resources. It just is.
It also speaks on the other side of the coin. When you're looking for the best talent, there are a lot of people that are preferring to, be third-party contractors because they can, because they're able to make it work, and so that makes it all the more important on our end to really give that reason, that incentive for folks to want to come take a full-time in-house job.
Yeah.
And I mean, getting harder. It's not just here. I hear it.
Yeah.
There's
a balance between third-party consultants and your in-house, right? I mean, as an MSP and an IT services organization, we're here to support companies take the run off their plate, right? And help do the daily management of IT technology, their technology infrastructure, and allow them to get economies of scale off the staff that they have, and allow them to be more strategic, right? I look at organizations in run, grow, and transform mode. Partner with us so we can get the run off your plate. Allow us to get in there and help you grow, but you have to focus on transformation, right? So put your mind share toward the transformation of the organization. That's a successful model for IT outsourcing, security outsourcing, right? That's how it's going to be successful.
Yeah.
Yep. Gentlemen, a pleasure. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching. We'll see you next week on Business Security Weekly.